Hello and welcome to the Alt Asset Allocation Podcast. Today's interview is with Rizzle. Non-fungible tokens, NFTs, are making headlines again. Rizzle is so plugged into the NFT ecosystem. I mean, his Twitter username is NFT Land. So he is just the guy to give us an update on what's going on and why NFTs are valuable beyond the hype. There's a lot going on right now, as always. So we cover a very broad discussion on all things NFTs, non-fungible tokens, and go into quite a bit of detail about the Metaverse, this Ready Player One future that a lot of us see happening. Before we jump into the episode, I wanted to take a second to thank you for all the great questions and feedback I've been getting. You guys really rock. If you're getting some value from this podcast, please drop me a line or a review. These things really mean a lot and they really help. All right, enjoy this episode with Rizzle on all things NFTs. Rizzle, welcome to the Alt Asset Allocation Podcast. Excited to have you on today.
Thank you, man. It's a pleasure to be here. Longtime fan of yours and your projects, and dope to catch up with you here, man. Excited.
Absolutely. And it's been a long time coming. We scheduled this thing probably months ago and have just been moving it around back and forth. Most of the time it's been me, but you might have had one reschedule in there that was your
busy,
fault.
dude. The space is hot, right? It's hard to do all the things.
It is indeed. Well, so we talked a bit about this before we started, but I've done a few NFT focused podcast episodes. So I was just looking back and most of them were like November of last year. I had one with Devin Finzer of OpenSea, Maddie, DCL Blogger, Jimmy of NFT 42, and then actually just a couple episodes ago with Koopa Trooper, number 54. So NFTs are a hot topic. They're a pretty incredible alternative investment. So definitely want to jump into all things NFTs. But before we get there, wanted to start off with you, Ryan Rizzle, and hear a little bit about your background and how you got into NFTs and what you're doing now.
Sure. My name is Ryan. Nobody knows who Ryan is in the NFT space. My screen name is Rizzle, which is sort of like an old nickname that I just used when I wanted to be anon in different places that just sort of took off on me. And here I am as full-time Rizzle appearing on podcasts and stuff. So I go way back in the crypto space, started tinkering around with Bitcoin and different altcoins back in like 2012, 2013, and was just really fascinated with the technology, like from start to finish. So I was constantly tinkering around with like any new project that came out, any new stuff. I was just really interested in it. And I hated all the communities. Actually, I was involved in like every subreddit, Bitcoin talk forum. I was, lurking in just about everywhere, and really didn't sort of find my home until NFTs came onto the scene. And then I felt like all the artists and creators started flooding the space, and I felt like I had like a kinship with them in some sense, and really loved their vibe, loved the, how, for years I was staring at charts and graphs and was fascinated by these charts and graphs, but bringing in the NFTs with all of the, awesome visual stuff that is, now sort of led into the whole metaverse conversation is just like a really fascinating direction that my passion like sort of took on its own. And so once NFTs came on the scene, I was like all in. I was like, man, this is an amazing application of this technology that I already felt was like super revolutionary. And I was like, this is like sort of the gasoline on the fire moment, I think, for crypto.
Absolutely. I had no idea that you were tinkering around for so long. I mean, 2012, that's super early days. And then, I mean, with NFTs, like in my mind, I've just met you in this NFT world. So, I mean, there's very few people that I would consider like more plugged into the heartbeat of what's happening within NFTs. And there's so much happening. It's crazy. Yeah. And for the people that are outside, it's still just like this crazy JPEG mania. but I guess this is being recorded middle or late August 2021. Let's start off just with set the stage of what's happening in the NFT world these days, or I guess I should say NFT land with you.
Oof. Rapid. Well, I don't know. I was gonna say rapid innovation, rapid something. I feel like the innovation, I don't want to say isn't quite as rapid as it was, but I feel like the rapid innovation sort of got us to this point now where like the hype train has just taken off. And now we're sort of in this period where everyone realized all the cool things that they can do with like the existing NFT technology and are just cranking out projects, cranking out, profile pictures are the big thing at the moment that are getting cranked out. And, people are just doing runs of 10,000, variations of different profile pictures that are usually animals or some sort of goofy cartoon thing. And they're just flying off the shelves right now. And it's nuts. I mean, so we, up until this point, I feel like it was build. What can we do with this technology? Because prior to 6 months ago, it's really hard to believe that there was just almost no secondary market at all for like anything, unless you were like a super crypto kitty flipper or like, really understood the nuances of like a couple projects. At that point, people were just buying NFTs to support other people who were making NFTs with, the understanding that you were probably just stuck with this NFT that you bought. It was just, I want this thing. I like this artist. I believe in this movement. And so now things have crystallized in like a really weird way where the secondary market is pumping and things are just flying off the shelves. And it's crazy to see like a full-fledged market actually being made like in crazy rapid real time, to the extent that, I'm OpenSea and them can barely keep up, I'm sure. I mean, it sort of shows in their product. They're just getting like totally overwhelmed by demand and everything. And it's a good problem to have, but it's just so nuts how rapidly it escalated.
Yeah, indeed. And this whole profile picture PFP craze is just wild right now. I have this like suspicion there's just some like mastermind group of anons like pumping these things out. It's just like a factory. I mean, people's wallets start to look like barnyards at this point, or a zoo, I guess. I don't know many barnyards that have those types of animals. I'm curious. So backing up a step, like you've been immersed in this NFT world for a while. How do you define NFTs, non-fungible tokens, to a complete newbie? Maybe not complete. They understand crypto. Let's start there. But like, how do you describe the value of an NFT to somebody like that?
The way that I've had the most success is like comparing it to things that people already have that are not NFTs. So I'm like, a lot of people can resonate with, they buy a movie online or they buy an album off of a platform or something like that. And so when I sort of make that comparison, and I'm like, look, you already own a bunch of digital goods, but you don't really like own them. They're trapped in your Google Play account or whatever. You can't send it to a friend so they can watch it. You can't sell it to someone else when you're done watching it. You can't even really throw it away, I don't think, if you don't want it anymore. And so I that's sort of like what brings it home to people when I can make the comparison of something that they already have. They're like, all right, I get that, they do tell me that I own this stuff, but I don't really own this stuff because I can't own it in the same way that I own a physical item. I'm like, you buy a DVD or something, in real life, you can do the same things with that you can do with an NFT. You can send it, you can let your friend use it. You can, sell it to someone else at a, yard sale or something like that. So those are the things that I've had the most success with. But dude, once you get into like virtual lands and like virtual worlds and like, VR art galleries and like owning 3D assets and everything, that's when like people's eyes start to glaze over. That's like round 4 or 5 of like, if they followed me, that deep into the rabbit hole, we get into that part. But dude, I think really the challenge is like explaining, like people can sort of grok the, I don't really own my movie, this makes me own my movie thing, but like helping people to understand like the overarching like ramifications of the technology and the possibilities that the technology allows beyond just like I get to own this thing, is really, really hard for people to wrap their heads around. And I think part of it is honestly because like us who are in this space are still like trying to wrap our heads around it and learning different things that we can do with it. I mean, you guys were like a great example, Charged Particles coming up with like this crazy innovation that like, and now it seems like people are coming up with some like really, really dope use cases for it. But like for a while there, it was just like, man, like look what we can do with these things. Like, does anyone realize like the potential of these things? And so I think we're still learning. It's really hard to convey like that aspect of things, that it's beyond like a one-trick pony. It's beyond just like I own my profile picture. Oh, I can also own my movie. Oh, I can also own my song. It's like such a big thing that overarches that those are almost like side effects that are like pretty dope.
Oh yeah, and I tell people often that it's almost easier to say what is not an NFT.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a fungible token, which is this, and everything else is an NFT or has a bit of non-fungibility to it. So I think I think it's probably easier for the younger generation to grasp the concept of digital collectibles and these digital assets having and retaining potentially increasing value. I mean, have you had much luck? Like, presumably, I just kind of imagine you're like me and talking about NFTs and crypto constantly. Like, I mean, do you have luck with like the older generation understanding about NFTs and their potential to have value and fit into like an investment portfolio?
No. I feel like I've managed to get to the point where like members of my family, my mom, that generation, they get it, but don't get it enough to take that next step and like are interested enough in investing in it. Actually, when was it? I don't even remember. It was during the last Bitcoin run up in like 2017. My mom was finally like, okay, will you take some of my money and invest in some Bitcoin for me? And I was like, yes, cool. My mom is in. And, the market was like on an upswing. It hadn't quite peaked yet, but it was like around Thanksgiving when everyone was just like losing their mind in like 2017. And, Bitcoin was on this crazy run up. And then it dipped like $200. My mom freaked out and was like, liquidate. I don't want in on this ride anymore. And I think for a lot of the older generation, it's still too volatile. It's still too like Wild West. It's still too like, even if they get that it's important, like they don't want to be around for the fluctuations or like the wild risk taking that's involved. Because I mean, I feel like you and I can probably identify some like reasonably safe bets within the space. But those safe bets by like conventional standards are not safe bets. And to do enough of your homework to know what those are is like a whole nother thing. So I feel like I don't know, man. Have you had luck or what's been your experience?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, for me, it's always frustrating because I can't even explain what charged particles is in a like easy way if somebody doesn't understand. There's a number of gigantic hurdles that they have to pay. It's like, well, if you don't understand why crypto has value, you probably won't understand why NFTs have value. And if you don't understand why NFTs have value, you don't understand the value of an NFT being injected with other values in a programmatic way. Like you're just never, you're never ever going to see it.
You're like, dude, I barely understand Bitcoin.
Yeah. It's like you're so many steps away. So that's always frustrating. But I think it's an easier concept for younger generation. I mean, these kids are asking for in-game credits. Gamers spend $75 billion per year on skins to make their virtual avatar look nice. So when you tell them that, like, hey, you don't actually own that. If that company goes away, all that money you've spent to make your avatar look pretty, like, is completely gone. These things resonate a lot more easily. I think I think part of it, and this leads into my next question, is like, okay, you get somebody across the line, like, okay, these NFTs, let's just focus on art because that's easier. Art NFTs, these have value. I get it. I get the provenance. I get that it's provably scarce, secured by a blockchain. All of these things, but then the next issue is like, okay, I'm ready to invest. How do I do it? What do I buy? How do you kind of lead people there?
Uh, yeah, man. No, I know. So I have these conversations. A bunch of my friends that I've grown up with have made their way into the space over the last like 6 to 8 months or so. And I've really tried to not. I started off day trading and continue to a little bit, so I'm always like shuffling something around or like hustling, and I let people I'm close with know, I'm like, dude, if you want to like copy exactly what I'm doing or whatever, I'll tell you what I'm doing, but I don't want to be responsible. Like, I take crazy risks, and I don't really have a problem with it, and I don't want you to be on the hook for my crazy ideas. And so I've really encouraged them. I'm like, dude, everyone in the US basically has to start with Coinbase anyway, right? So I'm like, start with Coinbase, poke around, buy a little Bitcoin, buy a little Ethereum, look at some of the other coins that are there, see if there's anything that's interesting. And I try and see like basically who makes it past that point. Because I feel like if I've gotten them to the point where they buy a little bit of Bitcoin and buy a little bit of Ethereum, that's about as conservative as you get in this space. So I'm not going to like fuck anything up for them like too much. I'm sorry, dude. I'm not supposed to curse on this. Not going to mess anything up too much for them by, recommending that. But then honestly, man, I'm like, dude, if you're interested in NFTs, you really got to get in the weeds. You got to be out here on Twitter. You got to be in the Discords. You got to be like looking at people's projects enough to be comfortable taking like a calculated risk, because there's a good chance, even though there's a secondary market for a lot of these things, there's still a good chance you get wrecked or you get stuck with, some of these NFTs that you bought. So, I've always, honestly, dude, I sort of got lucky. I mean, I was in NFTs very early on and really only buying stuff that I really liked. And, over the course of time, those things have done pretty well, but I was never really trying to, just straight up flip things, at like a, profit margin or something like that. So, I try to tell people to do that, because I do feel like with NFTs, there is like the satisfaction of knowing that if you've invested a lot of money in something and it doesn't go up in value, you can at least feel good that you got stuck with something that you like. And I feel like, when you're just looking at a token, that doesn't do anything for anybody. But, if you actually buy a piece of art, support an artist that you like, there's some real world like gratification that goes into that beyond the money. And I have a lot of stuff that's gone up in value today that I've purchased, based on those, that ethos that I couldn't even like, imagine parting with. It's like part of my life now. It's like a sentimental, I have like a sentimental attachment to it. I love the artist. They were really appreciative about it. And so, I think like if you can get people beyond like the straight up black and white, like I'm trying to flip, X amount for 30% profit or whatever by like this time, and like actually invest in stuff that they truly like, I feel like things have a way of working out when people take that approach, because it resonates with other people. And I feel like a lot of people, the speculative stuff is tough. Like, the stuff that people are making like 10x on, I mean, you really got to like know what you're doing and know the people and get lucky, in order to hit those. But I feel like there's enough people who like NFTs and appreciate art and NFTs for the sake of art and NFTs that if you just, buy stuff that is appealing to you, there's a good chance that it will resonate with other people too. And, if NFTs continue to expand, which I've no doubt they will, I feel like anyone getting anything now will be fine in like 5 years from now. Maybe you don't go all in on like, cow profile pictures or whatever, but if you spread the love around and you buy a bunch of things you like and you just sit on them for a little while, I mean, the space is exploding, and it's because it has merit and will be around for the long term. So I don't know, man. I really try and deter people from just like throwing money in on like random projects. Get people hitting me up. They're like, what do you think of this pig profile picture? Should I ape into it? I'm like, oh shit, dude. I mean, maybe, I don't know. Like the ones I don't, oh, the floor goes up to like 5 Ethereum like the next day. The one, so
never
I don't
fails.
know, man. It's a tough one.
Well, I mean, did you grow up collecting or investing in art ever? Was that because I think also for me, I mean, my whole sense of investing was like future cash flows or future growth, and not really like this collector investor mindset. So it was very difficult for me to even make the jump into gold having value, because it's like, well, there's no cash flows or anything, and also with art and also with digital art. So I'm curious, where did your mindset come from like, hey, this thing's a collectible, so it has value and it will retain value?
Yes, dude. I collected all sorts of junk growing up. Sports cards, I have a ton of them from like 30 years ago, dude. They're still worth like exactly what I bought them for like 30 years ago. It's such trash. I'm still annoyed. No, dude, I'm like, I was always collecting things and I was always hustling at the same time, man. So I was like one of these, I collected baseball cards as a kid, but I also had like the manual that I would like study religiously. And I'm like, dude, these cards have been going up, the last couple of weeks. I'm going to get in on that. I did the same thing with like video games, when the used video game stores started coming out, you could play those things like the stock market when you were like 12 years old or whatever, in the very early days of, even prior to like GameStop and stuff. So I was always like collecting things, always hustling. I have some collections that I just collected to collect. I have some collections that I just collected to hustle, some things that were like a combination of the two. And NFTs have sort of been that for me as well. I definitely have some things that I'm just collecting for the sake of like, speculative flipping. And I think this is going to go up in value. And then I have like a whole ton of art that I just, my house is filled with like in real life art, and was prior to NFTs. So, the art jump was like a natural, dangerous leap to me, to be honest, because my walls in my house don't allow for any more art, but my wallet in my pocket allows for infinite art, which, is cool in some ways, but is also scary in other ways, because you can never get out of that rabbit hole if you're not careful.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I think NFTs is such a loaded term, right? It's way too generalized, as we talked about a bit. I mean, do you think that there's a bit of a semantics issue, and that eventually we'll kind of unbundle this term of NFTs, and it will be, art, and it will be in-game and virtual land and financial products, or whatever else? I mean, talk to me about like how you kind of, I mean, are you mostly focused on art, or kind of where do you see your specialty within the NFT world?
Where do I see my specialty? Public mouthpiece is where I seem to gain the most traction. I'm a community guy, man. When I co-founded NFT 42, that's sort of where I naturally gravitated towards. It wasn't even like, this is what I want my role to be, or this is what your role should be. I just sort of fell into it, and, built out the Token Smart community, which is still thriving to this day. They're planning a huge in real life conference in Las Vegas in March. And so I personally, I really love that aspect of it. Way early on, when it was just, the 7 of us building in the bear market, I started a podcast with my buddy Matt, just to talk about NFTs, just because we just thought it was like so cool. Everything that was going on. We have a virtual meetup that we have like a speaker panel each week that, to talk NFTs, and you've been on it before. And so I really enjoy like, and I feel like that's what brought me to the space in the first place, man, which we mentioned earlier, like all the former crypto communities that I was involved in or around, I felt like were so toxic and like shilly and, full of people just trying to like pump and dump their project. And I, was very passionate about the technology, but really hated all of that. And, NFTs really changed all of that for me. And so, just being able to nerd out, like talk about cool tech stuff with like other people who are like genuinely fascinated by it. I feel like it was like sort of a homecoming for me. Like I had finally found my place within this tech industry. So that's honestly what I love to do, man. And have sort of like made a name for myself within this space, just like you're saying, man, just sort of like being in the mix and in all the places and having my finger on the pulse and just, talking with people about all the cool stuff that's going on. And it's really exciting, man. So I'm sort of like a jack of all trades, man. I know a little bit of everything, but I need people to execute my visions. Co-founded NFT 42, which has done very well, exited and under great terms, still good friends with Jim, but I'm on to do my own project within the space. And, I got a developer and an artist that I'm working with. So maybe I'm a builder, man. I just like to build. I like to tinker. I like to, just sort of be in the mix with the people and the stuff that I'm really passionate about. I don't know, man, if
I
that
love
really
it.
answers your question.
No,
I'm like all
it
over
definitely
the place.
does.
That's sort of my MO.
Well, I mean, I like we're collaborating on something with charged particles that maybe we'll talk about a bit later. But like you said, you have your finger on the pulse of a lot of these. You're talking to a lot of really, really intelligent people. What is the most fascinating, interesting little niche within NFTs right now that you find most interesting, fascinating, and why?
I think what's most fascinating and what's most exciting are like sort of different, man. I feel like what's most exciting to me right now is the stuff that like Super Rare is doing with their like big drop to the community or whatever. I feel like that was a huge push in the path towards decentralization, which is, sort of the drum that like crypto has been banging on for years, that I feel like has sort of gotten lost in this like NFT hype cycle, like profile picture boom. And so I'm really excited that revisits that narrative. And I feel like we'll also push people's hands, to not necessarily follow suit, but continue to, contemplate decentralization and move towards that direction. I feel like it made a lot of people sort of like stop and pause for a second. And so that is very, very exciting to me, because that's one of the original things that attracted me to crypto in the first place, was sort of this idea that, this is the tool that we can use to sort of level the playing field for everybody. So that's very exciting to me personally, but I don't get to like play with that or anything. What is most exciting to me on a day-to-day basis with NFTs is I really love like all the metaverse stuff, man. The expansion into the virtual worlds, being able to own a piece of like virtual land that you can then like set up shop and like sell your virtual products there, all based on NFTs. I feel like we're really, really just scratching the surface of all of that, even though like, some of us have been in it for a long time, but it's been like sort of a slow trickle into that space compared to like, this crazy profile picture boom, or, whatever you want to call it. But always trying to stay on the bleeding edge, man. And I feel like that's where it is at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like we've kind of lost sight of the true reason why we all got into the space with this profile picture mania right now. So I like that. The community drop was huge, and this is great. Let's dive into the metaverse a bit. For my listeners, I mean, how do you describe the metaverse to somebody? And don't say Ready Player One in a different way.
Dude, wasn't it? I watched the movie, man. I was so annoyed by like the love story that they crammed into it. I was like, oh,
well, yeah,
this
it's
is so
Hollywood.
like
You got to throw it in there.
Oh. Okay, how do I describe the metaverse? The metaverse is basically like, think of all the virtual worlds that all sort of work together. So it's not like one. What we have right now is a bunch of sort of siloed systems where you can log into a virtual world, but everything in that virtual world is sort of self-contained. So you need that virtual world's currency to do things in that virtual world. You need to have the file types proper for the wearables you might want to wear in that virtual world. And so there's a whole lot of virtual worlds that are basically doing that exact same thing. Like they're all really cool, but in order to participate in that virtual world, you got to have that virtual world stuff. Second Life is like one of the oldest examples of that. They're like a self-contained virtual world. A lot of people love it. They got their own currency. They've got their own stuff that you can buy in that virtual world, but it's not an NFT, right? You can't take it out of that virtual world. You can maybe like flip it in a shady way on eBay or something like that, but it's stuck there. So the metaverse is different, right? The metaverse based on NFTs is where you can take one thing and bring it to all the places and has a significant level of interoperability. Crypto voxels is a virtual world that I feel like is actually taking some pretty good steps in that direction. They're talking about incorporating the currencies of other virtual worlds into their virtual world. They're talking about having portals to all the other virtual worlds in their virtual world. And so that's very like metaverse thinking, like this, everything's connected, everything works together, everything is interoperable. We're seeing already, man, like a lot of people sort of trying to co-opt this term, like, they're join the metaverse. It's not a metaverse. It's really like a virtual world. The metaverse is a tough concept because it's like everywhere and nowhere, right? It's like we're all part of the metaverse. It doesn't exist in any one location, but anyone can be involved in the metaverse if your platform decides to be. Facebook is coming out with their own metaverse, which is again like essentially like a virtual world that I believe is going to be self-contained. I don't know enough about the project.
Yeah, I was just looking, and Facebook just launched a virtual reality business meetings in the metaverse push. So the next question was like, I mean, Epic Games has announced $1 billion toward building out the metaverse. Facebook is going hard into building out the metaverse. So I think all of us believe in this like decentralized, your true ownership of these metaverse assets, not this walled garden kind of utopian dream that we dream of, but how do you view the metaverse as we see it, this virtual reality with like true ownership built based on crypto and the blockchain and these other more well-funded people like Epic and Facebook coming in? How does the world shake out in your mind here?
I think they're essentially going to do what they are already doing, but just call it metaverse. I think the term is sort of being co-opted, and they're going to introduce like a VR component and like some currency and some stuff you can buy, and then hey, we built a metaverse type of thing. When in actuality, it's exactly what you said. Walled garden is like a great term that is what all these things are going to be. What was the original question?
Just how do they all fit in? I mean, we have these Facebook and then the decentralized versions. Where does it all go?
Hopefully nowhere. I'd like to see them not fit in at all. To be completely honest with you, it's very like as someone who like is a huge fan of the tech, it's very, very irritating to see like what appears to be just like a corporate takeover or corporate just trying to co-opt all the stuff that we've built. But I feel like, honestly, dude, the super rare drop like gave me some hope in terms of, I feel like we got something that they don't in terms of, the knowledge and the expertise and the community that is already like up around this. I don't know that the average Facebook user like knows or cares or wants a metaverse right this second. They're trying to get out in front of the game. However, we do. Like really, really badly. And so, I feel like, and I think we got some tricks up our sleeve that some of these big corporations don't want to do. And again, going back to the super rare thing, I was talking about this earlier. It's like, they made a lot of money. They didn't have to give it out to the community. Like they were doing just fine and could have pocketed that and no one would have thought otherwise. And that's sort of like the way it's always been. but this like crazy, like radical redistribution of wealth that the crypto community can do like within itself, because they're essentially rewarding like all their OGs, like all their OG artists and community participants and everything. And I feel like that's like a really interesting way that, sort of the rising tide can lift all the ships in this, NFT incubator that we're all sort of in right now. And so I think, if the metaverse, if we're able to successfully create the metaverse and not necessarily even keep them out. I mean, I guess like in a perfect metaverse, you would have a portal to the Facebook virtual world, right? But I think we got enough people with the expertise and knowledge and passion behind it that, the metaverse should be like a community driven project and always sort of has been. And I feel like, we're continuing to move in that direction. So that's my hope, man. I feel like otherwise the Facebook virtual worlds, the Epic Game virtual worlds feel like MMOs in VR, right? There's not a whole lot separating them from that. And that's very desirable to people, and that there's nothing wrong with that. But I wonder like how many people actually understand like the term metaverse in the sense that, people like us who have been around the term for a long time understand it. I think there's a huge disconnect for a lot of people who are like first stumbling upon that term.
Yeah, agree. But I mean, do people care about true ownership? And like people still use banks because the whole like be your own bank thing is freaking terrifying. I even know some people that are in crypto and they're like, I'm worried about like self-custodying anyways.
Yeah,
I like use it through this. And you're like, well, that's not crypto. Like you're not your own bank. You're still just putting another custodian in front of it. But no, I mean, I think it's going to be very fascinating the way all of these things shake out. And I think eventually that big incumbents like Facebook and Epic coming in, it will broaden the world's like awareness of the metaverse, and then eventually they'll end up in this more decentralized, perhaps pixelated version of the metaverse.
Dude, I think people don't know that they care. I feel like
exactly
part of it is like a consumer education problem on our part. And I feel like once we've sort of scratched that itch properly, the dominoes will start to fall, because I feel like once people get the concept that, wait, I just want to buy one NFT that works everywhere. I don't want to buy 10 different things. I'm cheap, speaking to myself. Like I don't want to buy, and there's like, a lot of other people like me. So I feel like once people wrap their heads around it, we're just so used to like siloed environments, siloed video games, siloed economic systems that we're all trapped in, that, this is the way it should be. It's just such a foreign concept to a lot of people.
Yeah, agree. Perhaps kind of adjacent to this is regulations. You always hear about regulations are needed within NFTs. Speaking more specifically about NFTs, what if you could like snap your fingers and have some sort of regulatory clarity, whether it be taxes or what have you, what would it be and why?
Oh, dude, this gets into like really tricky territory, right? Because it's not like a token in the sense that even though a lot of the tokens do a lot of different things, I feel like from an economic standpoint, you can look at them and for the sake of simplicity, you can say, this is a token. This is how a token should be regulated. It's a currency across the board. This is how it works. And, it's lazy legislation, but, we know what to expect. NFTs are different, right? Like now these are like, it's attached to a token, but it's a different set of assets, and the asset class changes from asset to asset. So, that sort of touches upon what you were saying earlier, like, that the term NFT is so like all encompassing that, unfortunately or fortunately, I think we got to incorporate more jargon, to distinguish, between these different characteristics of NFTs and, what asset class they belong in. Because, obviously it's a lot different to just like upload a document to the blockchain than it is to like sell your house on the blockchain, than it is to own like a piece of art, than it is to, do and be involved in some protocol for, a month or something. So there's so many different areas that need to be looked at. And my concern is that no one will, and it'll just be like some sort of one fell swoop type of regulation or some type of rule that won't look at the intricacies. And I don't know, man, I think it gets very, very tricky because, again, then if if this is a piece of art, how is the traditional art market regulated? Do we follow suit with them? Does that need to change? Does that extend to a piece of VR art that actually has some utility? Now this is not something I just look at. Now this is something I use. That there's just so many different like rabbit holes to look at when it comes to regulating or legislation. I don't know how we all don't get whacked with like KYC for a lot of these platforms eventually. But I think that moves the whole space to decentralized protocols, and then you're back to playing whack-a-mole again. I don't know, man. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, what I wish could be more clear and what I think probably will happen are very different. I mean, like you said, I think KYC AML concerns for a lot of these platforms, like, if I'm wire transferring $1 million, there's a lot of different hoops that I have to jump through. But if I buy a JPEG from you for $1 million, $100 million, right, it's just press 2 buttons and send. So the platform facilitating that, is potentially worried. And then, if that NFT owns other things or influences other, like, and it's also difficult to say art NFTs are classified like this and do like this, and game NFTs are classified because, I mean, in-game item is essentially artwork, and it can also have these other attributes that has something else related to it, and maybe it's tied to some cash flow or some ownership, like a number of different things. So it's certainly not an easy situation, that's for sure. But I think snap my fingers would be something around tax. Like, I know a number of people who just, they're not doing things because they're so unsure, myself included. Like, it's like, well, I'm not going to do this because what are the tax consequences of that? It's very difficult. So that's certainly the unfun, unsexy part of this whole world. That's for sure.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. Go ahead.
No. So I was
next round.
Yeah, I was gonna move into some rapid fire sorts of things.
Cool.
Actually, before that, I have one that's similar. So if a question from Twitter said, if you could remake the world of NFTs, what would you do differently? And do those same thoughts apply to the build out and evolution of the metaverse? Great question.
Oh shit. Let's see if I can rebuild the world with NFTs, man. Dude, I feel like on some basic level, like I see my kids playing video games and I'm like, oh my God, like my daughter plays this video game. It's like a Candy Crush knockoff, and it's got these really cute slugs. And I'm like, dude, I want to own these slugs. Like, why are these not NFTs? And so I think, dude, on some basic level, it would be so gratifying for like, all these gamers out there who are just grinding. I was one of those as a kid too. I'm like, man, it would have been so awesome to just have a whole stash of like all the NFTs that I accumulated as a kid, all my swords from like Final Fantasy and like Zelda and all this stuff. So from like a pure like fun aspect, that would be very gratifying. Dude, I mean, it's a broad question because the term NFTs is so broad, right? I mean, I feel like all of our important documents, all of our, pieces of identity get rolled into NFTs. I mean, you see gated access in the metaverse now, but there's very easy ways to incorporate, gated access with your NFTs into the real world. I'm sure we start like seeing stuff like that. I don't know if that's good or bad or inevitable. But there's certainly going to be lots of places where you just scan your wallet to get in. And if you don't have the thing in your wallet, you don't get in. Dude, I really, going back to like the original like crypto ethos, man, I really would like to see the technology used to like level the playing field. What Axie Infinity is doing is like so inspiring, literally changing the lives of, tons and tons of people in
500,000 daily active users. I mean, these numbers
Dude,
for a crypto company are just astounding for any company.
Yes, dude. So I feel like something like that is what I would really like to see with NFTs. Like I feel like, and I don't know exactly what that is, but there's absolutely the potential between crypto and NFTs to, level up a lot of people around the world who, don't have access to, lots of things that we have access to, but they do have access to a smartphone now. And that opens like, doors to a lot of people. So I feel like, even, and so going back to the video game analogy, man, I feel like even Axie, I don't even like Axie's game, man, full disclosure. It's like so boring to me, but it doesn't even matter. Like, something as simple as that unlocks like so many doors. And so I feel like that, for so many people. And so, I wonder if just, getting these in video games is sort of like the Trojan horse almost, in terms of like rolling this technology out into the hands of the entire world. We're sort of Trojan horsing it right now, like dressed up as like, fluffy penguins and everything like that on Twitter,
100%,
while we're like
100%
simultaneously overthrowing the banks. So I would really like to see it make its way into the gaming sphere in a big time. And I feel like a lot of dominoes start to fall once it does, because then someone like Epic Gaming, why participate in their, walled garden when the unwalled garden, I'm not only am I having fun, I'm making money at the same time, So I don't know, man, something like that, hopefully. It's too broad, man. It's a great question, but something that requires like a lot of noodling.
It is indeed, but this is why we love it, right?
Yeah.
Well, an easier softball question. What's the your favorite NFT you've purchased and why?
Oh man.
Or been
My
given to
favorite
you,
NFT.
or found, or claimed, or all the other ways one could make it way into your wallet?
Sure. I got a couple, man. The first NFT I was ever given, I didn't even know what it was. I was like hanging out on a social media platform. This dude was like, do you want an NFT? I'll send it to you. Give me your Ethereum wallet. I'll make you whatever you want. And I was like, all right, I have no idea what you're talking about, man. Make me a giant friendly potato. And so he drew a giant friendly potato, turned it into an NFT, sent it to me. And so that was like I don't know what you call it, the straw that broke the camel's back, or, really like sort of opened the floodgates for me. So that's like, I actually just found it the other day and I was horrified. I actually had it up on the market from a long time ago for like 1 Ethereum. And I was like, oh my God, dude, if this sold for 1 Ethereum today, I would be heartbroken, and, immediately took it off the market. My Avastar that I used as my profile picture is also very priceless to me. When I co-founded NFT 42, Jim McNellis gave it to me, and I felt like I had been like knighted by Jim, for being part of the organization, and used that as my profile picture for a long, long time, and could never imagine parting with that either. I have a couple pieces of art, man. I have like a really OG awesome piece from Stina Jones, who's one of my favorite artists. Miguel Gares did my new profile picture. I sourced one from him. I commissioned it from him, and so that's important to me as well. But probably those first two that I mentioned, man, the potato and my Rizzle Avastar are like, huge in my portfolio that I could just never ever part with.
I love it. What is the most undervalued NFT project or artist that you see out there, and why? Let's do two separate ones. So artist, like undiscovered artist as one, and then undervalued NFT protocol project group.
I sourced my profile picture from Miguel Garest. I'm a huge fan of Miguel Garest. I just saw that he is not on super rare. I felt bad for him. Everyone's talking about the super rare drop, and he's like, "Oh, could someone get me on super rare?" But I love his aesthetic. I love Stina Jones. She has blown up more over the years and has been in it for a long time. But Miguel's aesthetic is very much like hers in terms of being like cute and simple and funny, which is what I love. There's a lot of artists, man. I love Crypto Una. She's been in it for like, since the very early days. And, I feel like she's never quite like caught fire the way like some other people have, but she's like in it like, every day I see her like in it. And so I have like such a strong appreciation for people like that. There's probably a lot more out there, man. I'm really bad with names. But when I see stuff I like, I get it. There's this really cool artist from Thailand who's doing these goofy like walking cats. They're like super cheap. I picked up a bunch of his walking cats and he's just like so happy. And honestly, dude, that's what like really does it for me. Like, supporting some of these artists who are just like so thrilled that someone's buying their art. And I'm like, dude, I like your walking cat with the bouncing mushrooms, man. This thing is dope. So there's so many, man, though, so many artists are flooding the scene right now. There's a lot of artists on Hen that are selling their art for like dirt cheap. And I'm like, man, I feel like I'm robbing people when I buy something off of their platform for like $4 or something. So I think there's a lot of like untapped potential over there. That marketplace.
What was that platform?
Hen Hick et
No.
Nook.
Hickanuk.
The Tezos
the
one.
Tezos one. Gotcha.
It's horrible, but it has lots of awesome art.
Okay. I've actually heard that. They kind of took the world took Clubhouse by storm there for a bit. It was like Hickanuk all over the place. Yes. Which is kind of cool to see NFTs popping up on other blockchains. Do you know, can you transfer NFT from Tezos over to Ethereum? Is there a bridge?
I don't think so. Not that I'm aware of.
That would be really weird from like a provenance standpoint, I guess, which is always, these are like the unresolved questions, right? If I create a bunch of art on Hickanuk, it's got provenance, it's secured by a blockchain, but then I create it again on Ethereum and then also on Polygon. It's like, okay, well, where does it live if it's duplicated? Which kind of goes against the whole idea of it being unique. Right.
Yeah. But that comes like artist trust,
100%.
Point at that point, right? You got to like sort of trust that the artist you're investing in isn't going to money grab all over every other blockchain.
Yeah.
What I'm hoping, dude, is that, going cross blockchain doesn't matter as much as like having a wallet that you can just see all the blockchains on there. So then it doesn't matter where it came from. You can just see all your NFTs on your cool Rizzle wallet.
Yeah. Awesome. Most undervalued NFT project or company, and you can't say Charge Particles, that's biased.
I really love Proof of Beauty, which is a project that I stumbled upon by way of Steve Klebnov, who is a guy I really respect in the space. Let's see, and it's very he's the guy. I'm horrible with names. I'm pretty sure his name is Dave. I'm almost positive his name is Dave. Dude is brilliant. I've had like multiple calls with him. He's been on the podcast and he's just really thinking about the space in a really innovative way. And the projects that he launches are very much like this dude, Steve Klebnov, who I also think is very underrated, but he also doesn't try to be highly rated. He's just sort of working on his passion projects or whatever. But I would have said, 6 months ago, I would have said Art Blocks because I think Snowfro is just a genius. But I would lump these guys in the same category with Snowfro. Their things just haven't what has popped off like Art Blocks. But Proof of Beauty is really cool, man. I have a lot of respect for people like yourself, dude, who are like looking at this space in an interesting light, like trying to do different things with the technology just for the sake of like pure experimentation. And so, yeah, man, Proof of Beauty is a really cool project. He's had a couple of different projects like under that umbrella. And his most recent one is like this project called London, which is interesting. It's easier to read than it is to explain.
Cool. I'll link it. It's pob.studio, and I'll link all these things in the show notes for sure. Um,
Cool.
what's your favorite metaverse project right now and why?
My own, man. I got my own project. I'm
What? I
stoked.
didn't even know that.
Yes, sir.
Well, what a
Yeah,
perfect. Do you want to talk about it,
yes,
or yeah?
this is a great segue. Yes, I can talk a little bit about it, man. When is this going to get released? I don't want to know how much alpha I should drop here. When are we releasing this podcast?
So this is being recorded the 19th. This will probably drop in about three or 4 weeks.
Okay, cool, perfect. All right, because I'm on one that's coming out, I think this week or next week, that I'm going to drop this alpha on, so I can.
Gotcha. No, this will be behind. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so yes, I have my own metaverse project. I've been like sort of teasing it out as called the Rizzle project, but that's not actually going to be the name of the project because I want it to be like sort of secret until we release the name. It'll be give out too much. But I'm working with Miguel Garest, a developer called Chester Flums, who Snowfro set me up with from Art Blocks. And so it actually came by way of I had this concept for this metaverse NFT project that I wanted to do, and I really wanted to like lean hard into like metaverse and interoperability. So I had this concept and I kicked it to Snowfro's way over at Art Blocks, and he was like, "Yes, dude." He's like, "That it's a really good concept." He's like, "I don't know a developer that can execute it." And he's like, "Let me see who we got." So he actually found this guy who he feels very confident can execute my project. Snowfro did some things on the back end of Art Blocks to support this project that I'm doing. So I'm going to do an Art Blocks drop at some point. It's going to be not a shitty generative money grab. It's going to, I believe it will push the space forward. I'm trying to like lean hard into interoperability, to, wave my arms around a lot about the importance of it. But in my own like really wacky, goofy way. So I think I can sort of straddle like this being actually like a really funny, like meme project, but sort of like Trojan horse in it, like we were saying earlier, have like some like legit tech underpinning it that I think will be significant in the space, or at least I'm hoping it will. And I've kicked this idea a couple people's ways, man. I'll give you the alpha once we stop recording. But the people who I've run it by seem to think it's like a really good concept and are very much in support of it. So I'm stoked, man. This is like a dream come true, honestly. I, exited the company to be able to work on my own like wacky idea with one of my favorite up and coming artists, with a cutting edge developer, and then being able to launch on Art Blocks was like the trump card. I couldn't even believe that is even in the cards, but know enough people at this point, man, that I felt like I could pick my path forward, and doing a generative aspect of this is going to make it really, really dope. I'm really amazing. Excited.
Super, super awesome. Can't wait to hear more. Can't wait to see how we can support, and super, super excited. And Art Blocks drop. That's freaking great. Well, awesome, man. I mean, this has been a great conversation. Like I said in the beginning, you're super, super plugged in, obviously very plugged in, and about to be more plugged in this metaverse play. But where do you want to leave my listeners? Where can they find out more about you, your upcoming project, Rizzle Land, to be renamed, but all of the things?
I'm at NFT Land on Twitter, NFT LAND. That's pretty much where I am actively posting all of the things that I'm involved in. I do a regular podcast once a week with my buddy Matt. There's a link in my Twitter profile to that. We do a weekly meetup in virtual worlds. Most of everything gets routed through Twitter at this point, and most of my links are there, but my DMs are open. So if anyone wants to get in contact with me, feel free to hit me up. I'm on calls all week with people who are just interested in picking my brain about their project, and I love to talk NFTs. So, no one needs to be a stranger. If you got NFT questions or you want to hit me up, just shoot me a DM.
Sounds great. Rizzle, it's been a pleasure. Really, really appreciate having you on today.
Likewise, dude.
Thanks,
sir.
You,
man. Appreciate it.
There you go. First off, thank you very much for listening all the way through. I hope you got a lot of value out of that conversation. As always, you can find show notes, links, and more at altassetallocation.com. Please share this with anyone you think might be interested and derive any value from this conversation. And as always, you can reach out to me for any feedback or questions. Please give the video a like, or even better, subscribe on YouTube or your podcast player of choice. This really helps others find the podcast or the video as well. Thanks a lot. Hope everybody has a fantastic day and stay safe out there and invest wisely. Cheers.